I'll let you in on a secret. My favorite hobby is designing my own original Sonic characters, like these. I call this one Kermit the Frog, and this is Megan the Stallion. But I'm not the only one cranking out unique fan-made designs. The internet is crawling with OCs, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry the Hedgehog has already done these normal animals to death. That's why we at the Harry Gold Show are taking a leaf from classic Sonic characters like Fang the Sniper, so we can truly strive to make the most original characters the World Wide Web has ever seen.
Coming to you from beautiful downtown Fortitude Valley, it's the Harry Gold Show, with your host, Harry Gold.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program. Now, I've explained the ins and outs of the Sonic art style on this channel before, from its inexplicable obsession with Clarabelle Cow-style gloves to its prevalence of disturbing meta-shaped cyclopses. You reckon it hurts if someone pokes them right in the middle there? But this time we're using all that knuckalicious knowledge to make more original designs than ever before. These OCs are gonna be next level. Zone. Act? To that end, I got to thinking, what in the animal kingdom hasn't been sonicated yet? Sega's already done a pretty wide variety of critters, from hedgehogs to cats to echidnas to cats to echidnas to hedgehogs. So we need something fresh, and that's when the solution hit me. Aliens! What character could be more original than a species you just made up yourself? It'd be a completely new concept to the Sonic cast, not counting Yakka and the Wisps, or Black Doom, or the Black Arms, or the Ancients, or the Cocos, or as of Sonic Frontiers, Chaos, or Cheese, or the rest of the Chows. Okay, so maybe they have done aliens. But none of them are called Joe Blow the Alien, so they don't count. When it comes to Sonic OCs, it's all in the. That's just science. But this also means my OC could look like anything, and I'm far too easily crippled by indecision to cope with that. So I employed some Hollywood producer-style originality, randomly selecting two existing things and mulching them together to make something that technically counts as new. I'm also a big fan of the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is why I've decided to call this OC Okay, so maybe going off-world for these OCs is a little too try-hardy. They don't all need to be crazy made-up freaks to be original. There's already plenty of freaks right here on Earth. The ocean has no shortage of nightmarish monstrosities in it, and not one of them has been a character in a Sonic game yet. So if we want original, how about I make it a crustacean? More! A buff crustacean? More! A buff crustacean in floral print pants. God, that's just so much original I can hardly handle it. I'm also a big fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is why I've decided to name this OC You know what? I'm through second guessing myself. I was right the first time. Lobsters are pleb stuff, and I'm thinking too small here. Larry is destined for bigger, better things, and when it comes to making OCs, the only limitation is your own imagination, because Lord knows no Sonic fan ever let lack of drawing ability get in their way. The world is your OC's oyster. In fact, your OC could be an oyster, or a water bear, or a bacteriophage. The possibilities are endless. And you know what? I think I've got it. I'll make Larry one thing they've never had in Sonic and probably never will have. A Christian. And there's plenty more mind-bendingly original characters where that came from. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Excuse me, mister. Is this the right place to get tablets?
It sure is, Sonny. You want tablets for headaches?
No.
Stomach aches?
No.
Vitamins?
No.
Then what do you want tablets for?
Making art.
Art? Then I've got the tablet for you. The new Artist Pro 14 Gen 2 drawing tablet from XPPen.
Wow.
You'd need a pretty big glass of water to swallow that. It has a 99% sRGB color gamut display. That's a lot of colors. And an X3 Pro Smart Chip stylus with faster response reduced time, higher accuracy, and pressure sensitivity that doubles the industry standard. Now that's a sensitive pen. The Artist Pro 14 is also ergonomically designed with wrist support and built-in fold-out legs. It features low blue light eye protection and an anti-glare etched glass surface that simulates a realistic pen and paper experience, as well as a separate wireless shortcut remote for easy portable access. Follow the link in the description to get your Artist Pro 14 today. XPPen. Dream, brave, true.
Now, Sonic has already been known to dabble in the occasional subtle Star Wars homage. We may never be able to achieve the understated cleverness of the Death Egg, but for this OC I'd like to continue that particular line of inspiration. I figured he should be green with antennae like Greedo from A New Hope. I wanted to draw on Han Solo's vest with a side of beige look for the costume design. And in honor of Kylo Ren, I also gave him a big honking schnoz. By the way, XPPen asked me to give my thoughts on the Artist Pro 14 after trying it out, and I gotta tell you, not only is the display quality really nice, but they were not kidding about that pressure sensitivity. The fine detail it's capable of is genuinely amazing. Then for the name, I'm a big fan of the original Nosferatu. That's why I've decided to call this OC Okay, for this one I had a really off-the-wall idea. I thought, what if I anthropomorphized one of those tins of spinach that Popeye eats before beating the ever-loving Christ out of Bluto? The idea's evolved a little since that initial inspiration, but man, I impress myself with my originality sometimes. I'm also a big fan of interminable award ceremonies, which is why I've decided to name this OC You know what we don't see enough of? Robot OCs. Everybody's so caught up in these silly animal characters that they forget there's a perfectly valid contingent of bottom-tier mechanical cast members that nobody really cares about. Of course, matching their look is a little tricky, seeing as their appearances are about as consistent as a box of SpongeBob popsicles, but that's not getting in my way. I'm also a big fan of rosemary, rom-coms, and insects, which is why I called this OC So, in a previous video about making Sonic OCs, I said
Foxes, crocodiles, armadillos, albatrosses, or whatever the heck Fang the Sniper is supposed to be. But does anyone actually care about Fang the Sniper?
I guess that's a yes. The comments section was not remotely hesitant to jump in and educate me on precisely what Fang is supposed to be, with varying degrees of accuracy. And I'd just like to say, come on guys, give me a little credit. I do know. I read the same article on the Sonic Wiki that you did. The nature of this character species is just such a convoluted quagmire that I didn't want to blow half of my runtime trying to explain it. Unrelated, but I'm also a big fan of World War I, which is why I'm calling this OC So Fang the Sniper, for anyone who isn't as chronically ensconced in the Mobian rabbit hole as many of us apparently are, is, or perhaps was, a fairly obscure Sonic character from some early games that aren't terribly well remembered, like Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, and the grammatically indefensible Sonic the Fighters. I say was because suddenly Sega's decided they actually do care too, and have just brought Fang back for a starring role in Sonic Superstars. As for this OC's name, by the way, Nintendo's coolest characters like Captain Falcon and Samus and Star Fox are all bounty hunters, so I've decided to call this OC Bounty Hunter the Dog. Or was that the other way around? Anyhow, here's where things get messy for our pal Fang. Despite looking something like a kangaroo detective that drowned in a Grimace milkshake, he was designed to be a jerboa, which is already an issue in itself because nobody knows what on God's green hill zone a jerboa is. Oh, I did it again. Before I get a deluge of comments insisting they do in fact know what a jerboa is, let's just nip this in the bud. It's a creepy looking jumping desert rat. Whoever saw a gerbil and thought, know what this thing needs? Rabbit ears and chicken legs. Apropos of nothing, I'm a big fan of the Krabby Patty, which is what inspired me to name this particular OC Anyway, despite having about as much family resemblance to a jerboa as Stan Lee does to Bruce, that's what Fang's species was. But jerboas apparently weren't cool enough for the suits, so Sega declared him half wolf, half jerboa. I don't think that's even biologically possible, and not just because a dinner date with a wolf would mean the jerboa is the date and the dinner. Except outside of Japan, Sega decided to localize him as Knack the Weasel instead, for about 5 minutes anyway. Then they changed their mind again and renamed him Fang everywhere, later deciding he was actually half weasel, half wolf, until they decided he wasn't. Now, according to the Sonic Superstars website, he's a jerboa again, for the time being at least. And that is...
whatever the heck Fang the Sniper is supposed to be.
I told you it would take forever to explain. As if to prove my point, I've just found out right now, after writing the script and recording the dialogue for this video, they've just started calling him a new name. He's Fang the Hunter now. They've changed their mind again, for crying out loud. Anywho, for this OC, because I'm a big fan of the Ministry of Magic, I've decided to name him... A lot of helpful commenters were also pointing me in the direction of the Sonic comics to use as reference when creating OCs for critters that aren't otherwise represented in the games. Elephants, octopuses, robot elf puppet clowns, you know, everyday animals like those. However, I've avoided using the comics simply because it's specifically the art style of a guy named Yuji Uekawa that I'm trying to cannibalize here. And the present day Sonic comics are all done by other artists who sort of approximate the same aesthetic. In other words, when it comes to making new animal characters, I'm pretty sure they're just guessing too. Plus, I'm pretty sure cannibalizing a cannibal is how you catch a brain-eating parasite. As a side note, I'm a big fan of Entertainment Tonight, which is why I've decided to call this OC... For this final OC, I'm going totally freeform. I'll just start with... a husky. I think we can all agree that's a cool kind of dog, but it'd be pretty plain on its own, so I'm just gonna mix in some other animals too. A little crab, a healthy splash of earthworm, and hot damn! Even I can hardly believe just how mind-bogglingly, face-meltingly, kidney-punchingly original my original characters are. It's a gift. But I'm also a big fan of the Halloween movies. That's why I decided to name this last OC... So this really isn't anything to do with anything else in the video, I just had to mention it somewhere. You may have seen that YouTuber Colleen Ballinger, aka Miranda Sings, made waves with her unique apology video song, which went like this.
All aboard the toxic gossip train, chugging down the tracks of misinformation, the toxic gossip train. You've got a one-way ticket to manipulation station.
But a couple of years back, I made a song written from the perspective of someone who thought they were being wrongly cancelled, and that went a little something like this. All aboard the train to cancellation station, on a one-way ticket to annihilation with me. Forget the Simpsons predicting things. You heard it here first on the Harry Gold Show. Let's play a game. I'll draw someone famous, and 3 people that guess who it is in the comments will get a shout out in the next episode. If your guess for the caricature last time was His Royal Highness King Charles III, you are unquestionably correct. I actually drew this while he was still a prince. Now times change. His Majesty's rule from the Wheel of Winners is... the 10th, 20th, and 30th correct guesses win. Noonsel gave no one the time of day, rising to the top spot. Vinlove Anton Handesbukia was handed second place, and DJB 903 presumably stands for Did Just Beat 903 Other People, landing safely in third. Well done everyone, thanks for playing. The eyes on this week's subject are so sunken, James Cameron made an extremely overrated movie about them. When World War III finally breaks out, this person's chin will almost certainly be conscripted. They'll need something to dig the trenches with after all. And their forehead is so tall, they don't need product to keep their hair up. The lack of gravity up there takes care of it for them. Now who could this be? If you know who that was, let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, don't forget the most important OC. His name's Click. Click the subscribe button. But this has been the Harry Gold Show. So until next time, stay safe. And God bless.